Hello and welcome to Crucible of Words for more dedicated legacy action. Today I'm playing a pretty spicy one that somebody sent me from the 5.0 deck dump. This is a Crashing Footfalls Cascade deck, but not as you know it. Ordinarily the Crashing Footfalls deck uses things like Shardless Agent and Violent Outburst to cascade all the way into this, make some rhinos and beat down with a little bit of counter magic. This build is a little bit different because we are trying to use Bloodbraid Marauder as our cascade option. This means we're not having to run a bunch of Summon Spirit Guides, Elvish Spirit Guides, that sort of thing. So Bloodbraid Marauder is a 2-drop that has Cascade, but only if we have Delirium. So in order to get Delirium, we're going to be doing things like cycling Street Wraith, cycling Glassdust Hulk, channeling a Colossal Skyturtle, cycling an Architect of Will, that sort of jam. So we're going to be putting different types into our graveyard. We've got some other pretty spicy cards in here like Rise and Fall. So this is an interesting card that doesn't mess with our cascade chains and gives us the ability to bounce an enemy creature and get a creature back from our graveyard. So it could be one of our cyclers, for example, or another Bloodbraid Marauder to go again. Or Incubation and Incongruity. So this has a mana value of 4 because of both halves, but we can do it for just paying 1 mana. This puts a sorcerer into the graveyard to help with our cascading. We've got some Uros because why not? Uro is just a good card when we're in these colours. Brazen Borrower is some interaction we can run. We get to run Daze in this. So we get to run Daze and Force of Will because we're using the Bloodbraid Marauder, which is very interesting to me. We have Once Upon a Time to try and help us find some stuff. This also puts an instant into the graveyard. Got a couple of Tarmogoyfs because why not, I suppose. And a couple of Orcish Bowmasters because good cards are good. So it's a bit of a mishmash of stuff going on here. But a while back I played a Living End deck that ran a very similar sort of philosophy to this, with Bloodbraid Marauder as your cascade outlet and then using a bunch of cyclers. So this is kind of the same thing, except instead of trying to do Living End, we're trying to do Crashing Footfalls, which makes sense because if you cast a Living End in Legacy in this day and age, you're probably going to reanimate your opponent's most terrifying monsters, like Archon of Cruelty and stuff, and we just don't want that. So that's basically the deck. Mana-wise, we've got 3 Wastelands tucked in here, alongside 1 basic in the form of an island, and then just a bunch of dual lands. So let's just pull them all together. So we got Taiga, Trop, Bayou, Badlands, Underground Sea. And we got a second, and we got a Volk as well, sorry. So we've got quite a mishmash of lands. So I'm going to have to navigate my way through that. But I was impressed when I played the Living End build along this. So hopefully this has got some to it too. We do also have a Life from the Loam, so we can kind of circumvent our low land count a little bit, as well as assemble a Wasteland lock, which is something I love to do. Sideboard wise, we got some free removal for when we need it. We've got a Collector Roof, so we can try and stamp out some scary artifacts. Got some Force of Vigors, also for artifact decks. Got more counter magic. And if our opponent does have scary monsters in their deck, why not have some Inevitable Betrayal? This is just bribery, but we get to play off of the cascade chain. So hopefully this can find us some Emeralds or Archon of Cruelties or something fun. And we got some Graveyard Hate lastly in these Fairy Macabres. We can't play Graveyard Hate that gets hit by the cascade chains. That does put us in sort of Leyline or Fairy type territory. And this is a card that goes into the graveyard for the purposes of getting Delirium, so it makes sense. Also, when we're trying to get Delirium, that does make Tarmogoyf just generally a bigger creature. So I do like it as an inclusion here. Alright, that's the deck. It's a bit of a wild one, but sometimes I like to play some wild stuff that people send me, and this is certainly one of them. So without further ado, remember to like and subscribe, and let's get jamming some cool cascade nonsense. Alright, we can probably make this one work. I forgot to mention as well, in the deck tech we've got some Lorien Revealed tucked away in there as well. I think we can keep this one. We are relying on not having our Lorien Revealed thoughts used away. Hedge Maze. Alright. So we're looking at probably some sort of like Bant adjacent control. Alright, we're going to cycle this first. So if we draw a land that casts like our Incubation, that gives us more options. And we did not draw a land that does that. So then we'll play this. And I will cycle this Lorien Revealed now, just in case there's some kind of stifle in our near future. What land do we want for this? I think it has to be green. Is it green-blue or is it green-black? It could just be the basic island and play it super safe. But we do have a Crashing Footfalls that we want to do something with at some point. So I think I am going to get the Trop. That does expose us potentially to a Wasteland. But we do have a redraw here, and we've got Incubation. If you're unfamiliar with this one, look at top 5, reveal a creature from among them, put it in your hand. A Brainstorm, so I imagine we're probably going to see Brainstorm into fetch land from our opponent here. An Underground Sea, so this could be like Bug Beans, rather than towards the Bant Colour Pie. Another Lorien Revealed, that is quite handy for where we want to be here. So we play out this Tropical Island, then what are we doing? I think we want to cycle before our opponent has access to... If we cycle before our opponent has access to Orcish Bowmasters, that's quite important. But if we Crashing Footfalls now, we can have that going in the future. So this isn't an amazing play, but I think that's the one we're taking. And we have this Lorien Reveal, we can cycle. If our opponent taps out of Stifle Mana, we can do that. Our opponent is also island cycling. This does feel a lot like a Bug Beans approach from our opponent. A Ponder, sure. Now, if our opponent starts missing land drops, we can pivot into a pretty spicy Life from the Loam Wasteland lock type thing. But we know our opponent's got another land stocked up with the Lorien Revealed already. At the turn after, they might miss. Okay, there's a Wasteland there from our opponent. They're going to hit our trop. Sure. A Nile Spellbomb. That's pretty annoying for us, in all honesty. This looks a lot like the Bug Beans list that Bosch and Roll recorded with, or published even a video on, I think the day I'm actually recording this, or it was yesterday. So we don't have access to the sources we want here, which isn't ideal for us. We might want the Volcanic Island so that we can cast our Bloodbraid Marauder, but it's not going to do anything in the face of the Nile Spellbomb. So I think we're just going to get this island and play a little bit safe here. Alright, that's going to keep ticking down. Street Wraith. I think I would rather cycle this when there's no Orcish Bowmasters. Another Wasteland. Alright, let's do this. Let's give me old business. Make our soft permission of Daze better. Okay, so we have the Bloodbraid Marauder. The issue is our opponent can crack this and turn Delirium off. Although, as soon as we cast this, it should go on the stack, right? So we might be able to mess with the timings of our opponent's Nile Spellbomb here. Whereas someone like Life from the Loam will just get countered by the Nile Spellbomb. We might be able to get a Murktide Regent. We are not in a position to beat this card. Our opponent was probably not playing around Daze, given the fact that we've shown them Crashing Footfalls. But the Bug Beans deck tends to run its own Dazes, as well as Force of Will, so they might be able to push us through. Yep, that's what I was afraid of. Because now, they've got the threat in play, and we've got no lands. So we don't get to just keep wastelanding our opponent. Okay, that's an actively good draw for us. Exile target creature and make some frogs. Maybe we're doing that soon. If our opponent just cycles us to draw a card, I would like to have a Lorien Revealed. Yeah, so if they crack this for value, at least we can put this in the graveyard and maybe get towards some... Okay, if they're not playing a black source, it's not going to crack this for value. I just meant that we might be able to put a sorcery in the graveyard and have additional types. Right, now they're just spewing this off now. Are they going to exile their graveyard? They are. They're doing that just to grow the Murktide Regent, so it's a 2-turn clock. That's pretty reasonable. So now we're in a bit of an awkward spot, because if we do the Bloodbraid Marauder this turn, we will just die. So, change of plan. Let's go and get the Underground Sea, and we're going to cast Rise and Fall. Because this allows us to return target creature card from the graveyard, target creature on the battlefield to its owner's hands. And at some point we can get some Rhinos. Next turn maybe. The turn 5 Once Upon a Time, my favourite. Okay. So Rise. I would like to get back this Architects of Will, and I would like to bounce this pesky little Murktide Regent that's going to kill us next turn. Our opponent's got 3 cards in hand. Daze beats us here, Force of Will beats us. Alright. That's something. Now we need to find our red source, so that we can put a Bloodbraid Marauder into play. We don't have any green sources hanging around, so we can't Life from the Loam back these other sources. Up the Beanstalk, sure. I don't think this game is going to be about raw cards anymore. It could still end up like that. But... Alright, we're about to get some 4/4s, so now we're going to be in charge. So our opponent might have had a counter spell but wanted to save it for the Crashing Footfalls. Because they can win eventually with whatever. Yep. So our opponent is going for Force of Will on our Crashing Footfalls. Perfectly understandable. If we cycle this, it might find us the source we're looking for. It did find us the source we were looking for. That's quite exciting. So we can get a Volcanic Island here, or we can get a Taiga. Quite like the Taiga. That gives us the green as well for the Life from Loam next turn. We've got lots of types in our graveyard, so let's just put a Cascade, trigger on the stack, get ourselves a little friend. We've got Force of Will blue card as well. So now we're putting 11 power into play. The 2-turn clock backed up by Force of Will, and then we can do some Life from the Loam shenanigans next turn and just put the screws into them with the Wastelands. Oh wow, we just got them dead. Incredible. Yeah. Very surprised that worked, but very happy it did. So, in this matchup, what do we want to do? Force of Vigor is a thing that can interact with our opponent's Beanstalks, but they don't have other permanents we want to hit with that. It's not like the Bant decks where they've got the Leyline Bindings as well. So I'm not wholly convinced on these. Other options that have some merit to them, Force of Negation and Mystical Disputes. These allow us to fight over counter spells, or fight over Beanstalks and some scary permanents that way. So, what 3 cards would we like to replace for these blue spells? I'm expecting some more graveyard hate from our opponent now they've seen that we're like a Delirium deck. I like the Tarmogoyf as just some solid threats. I like the Life from the Loam because I feel we can really punish our opponent because they're not going to have that many basics in their deck. Incubation, Incongruity, that seems fine. Daze on the play seems alright. We didn't show our opponent counter spells outside of the Daze. Colossal Skyturtle bouncing a big Murktide is important, so I need to keep the Rise and Falls and this Colossal Skyturtle. Is it just some Once Upon a Times? Like, we are kind of desperate to find our Bloodbraid Marauder, so I don't know if we can trim very many of these. I don't think we can have one for a Force of Negation. I think that's about it. I don't really want to trim any more of these. I like Mystical Dispute to protect our own stuff, but it doesn't stop that many of our opponent's things. Like, we can interact with Murktide Region and their counter spells, but that might not be enough. Ooh, Once Upon a Time in an opening hand. Yes, please. Force of Will. Intriguing. That makes you want to cycle this first. And then I'll decide what land I'm playing, perhaps. So I could just play the Wasteland Once Upon a Time. Am I worried about them dazing our Once Upon a Time? Not especially. Let's cast a free spell for free. There is the Brainstorm. We're not fighting over a Brainstorm. But if we play the land, we can get a little bit punished there. I will put this Brazen Borrower into my hand. It's better than nothing. We could just Wasteland our opponent right now. I quite like that. It's going to leave us scrabbling in the dirt a little bit, trying to find another land. But attacking our opponent's mana is a very good way of dealing with a Bug Beans deck. Until they get their Life from the Loam or With the Bloom commands up and running. Oh, wow. Okay, so they were Brainstorm locked then, which is another reason why we fight off the Wasteland. Because our opponent's Brainstorming like that, we get some purchase. Alright, I'll take that win. 1-0, let's go to round 2. Alright, we can suspend the Crashing Footfalls. That's not a terrible way to begin the game. I'll keep this one. It's not really what we want to do, but I think it's acceptable. So I'm going to go get the Trop here, so that we at least have the Daze up and running. And we've got another island if we need it anyway. So let's just suspend the Crashing Footfalls. We can definitely catch our opponent out with the Daze, because they're not going to expect it from a Crashing Footfalls deck. Yavimaya. Lava Spur Boots. That's not really where we want to be aiming our counter magic, I don't think. So now we can do some Incubation, Incongruity. That's our jam. Let's take a look. Nothing. A big fat nothing. Yikes. Okay, so that's sorcery, instant, land. Because Incubation, Incongruity is 2 types, which is why people like it so much in decks like this. So we've got 3 types. We just need to find another one to put in the bin. So we probably want to get a Volcanic so that we can actually cast our Bloodbraid Marauder at some point. Flagstones of Tricare. I'm getting some sort of green-white depths vibe from our opponent right now. Volk. We got some rhinos coming soon. Coming down the pipeline. I'm a little bit reluctant to play out this volcanic. I think I'm going to cycle this for a different land first, because I need to protect the red source a bit more. And I'll just get this basic island, I think, and play this out. This might tell our opponent that we are needing to protect our red source. Crop rotation. We don't get to do anything with this because our opponent's got the mana, so our Daze is not going to be the most helpful here. Just going to be a Savannah into Urza's Saga, I would imagine. And they can start churning out tokens and possibly equipping them in this turn cycle. There it is. So this turn, if they have a land, they can make a construct and equip it and bash for 2. Which isn't, like, amazing, but it's getting towards winning the game. Alright, our opponent not doing anything there. That is a bit of a surprise. Soon we will have 4/4s. A Force of Will. I guess we're going to Island Cycle again. Our Daze is going to be our blue card at this point. Just protecting that red source in our hand. So we're going to get 2 rhinos next turn. Alright, we're going to see a construct. So they're obviously holding up for something there. They had some sort of interaction, probably a Swords to Plowshares type effect. Okay, so now they've got 2 3/3s, they're about to be 4/4s, and they can equip 1 and bash for 9. Soulgrad Lantern is pretty devastating for us. A Wasteland. Okay, so we've been playing around that this whole game anyway. So there's 9 damages. But we do get some 4/4s now. And these can trade into what our opponent's doing. Taiga. I'll keep that in hand and have this hardcast Force of Will available. We don't care about our Volcanic Island getting Wastelanded as much because we've drawn the Taiga. Ramanap Excavator. No, thank you. Okay, we need 1 more card type in our graveyard. Caracas. Okay, that doesn't do anything here. So our opponent's got a plow. This can be annoying. If we block 1 and 1, they plow 1. That doesn't really make any difference to us. Right, let's go. And just try and trade these off. So, like, Street Wraith would be useful here, or Architects. Green and blue. Let's have a Once Upon a Time going. Let's put this Architects of Will in my hand. Let's cycle Architects of Will. Let's put some other types in the graveyard. And now we can cast this, and as soon as we cast it, the trigger goes on of the Cascade, so they don't really have an interrupt timing, which is really important. Sure. Cascade is already on there, I'm afraid. Let's get this Crashing Footfalls. 11 power, here we go. It was good last time, let's see if it's good this time. Our opponent might spend their Wasteland hitting our Volk. A Crop Rotation with 1 mana floating. Available, so we didn't really get to Daze profitably here. Another Savannah from the Flagstones, and then this crop is probably going to find them another Saga, yeah. Okay, it's either that or they pivot into a Thespian Stage, Dark Depths type line. My opponent feels like they're maybe sort of somewhere between Green White Depths and Maverick. Those decks have an awful lot of overlap. The Ramanap Excavator is what makes me say that. Well, they're both Green Sun Zenith decks. That's a pretty scary one. If I counterspell this, they don't get to make a construct token this turn, which I think is worth doing. Are they really not equipping that? Oh, wow. If they equip that, they get haste and can start making land drops. Alright, I will take that. We have multiple lines here that are good for us. So I think we attack first. Get some damages going. I can't believe they didn't equip here, though. So if they block one of the rhinos, then we can Bowmasters and ping this down. And we want to save the mana for the fall. The rise, sorry. So cast this. So this is black. And this. If this doesn't work, we then play one of our red sources. Well, we can play one of these sources if we want to. And then we also get to... That should finish this off now. A crop rotation. Feels like a crop rotation. Just Sajiri step. Or they're going to try and just get some other value here. So what is that going to become a copy of? A Saga? It is a Saga. That was always a possibility with that line. So I would like to cast Rise and... Oh, that's a little bit awkward, isn't it? Return target creature card from a graveyard and target. So if we want to bounce this, we have to give them back their Ramnat Excavator. Which is definitely annoying, but I don't think the game is about that, so I guess that's probably fine. Doesn't feel fine, but... You know, play silly games, win silly prizes. The other option is to make them discard cards in their hand, but I don't think that's where I want to be there. Well, we've seen 3 crop rotations, so I'm not expecting a 4th anytime soon. I wonder what new terrors they have for us. A Shadow Spear. That's pretty good. But if they're spending their turn just equipping Shadow Spear and stuff, that's not the end of the world for us. You can see the Ramanap rather than the Knight. Okay, that's kind of better. I'm just getting a Saga. They're probably going to equip the Lava Spare Boots to something. Oh no, they've just got another little friend. Alright, many friends over there. But we do have the biggest creature on the board. Which is not nothing. Oh, how do I feel about this Brazen Borrower? That's certainly got some sway to it here, hasn't it? So we can attack with this. If we do a double block, we can blow them out pretty hard. Alright. So instead, we're probably going to be looking at... If they Wasteland us, we don't get to play the Borrower. I think we're just going to play this Taiga out to make sure that we can play around a Wasteland more easy. So we're going to try and bounce the thing that has a bunch of equipment on it. Try and stop their life gain and maybe put the Borrower into play as well. No, I'm not sure what objects they've got left to find off of Saga. It's probably going to be, what, like... a Mox Diamond and an Expedition map. That's what I'm expecting here. There's a Mox Diamond. Dried Arbor is another blocker if they want it. There's a Saga. Sure, you can equip your Shadow Spear over here. I was hoping they'd commit a little bit more to that, but... Petty Theft, this Construct token, I think. There is an argument to just hit the Shadow Spear, but I don't particularly like that. They're going to Sujiri Step us. I don't think we win if they have a Sujiri Step here. Now, we should have lost the turn that they played the Knight of the Reliquary. They should have just equipped with Lava Spare Boots. Okay, this is going to put a creature in our graveyard. I think we just take 6 and try and make something shake loose. Maybe we do want the Force of Vigors here. That's what I'm thinking sideboard-wise when we get there. This gives us a land, but I think it's too little too late. Yeah, so Force of Vigor is probably going to be pretty good here. I actually quite like Collector Roof in this matchup. I know some people have mixed feelings on it, but I quite like it. I don't like Daze in this matchup at all, though. Being able to bounce Marit Lage feels very important, so we want to keep those aspects of our deck in check. I like Force of Will to counter crop rotations, but it doesn't feel amazing. Maybe we trim a Once Upon a Time and a couple of forces. We've still got the forces in there. I do kind of want some Graveyard Hate, but Fairy Macabre isn't that great as Graveyard Hate. We could bring in a Force of Negation over a Force of Will to hit the life from the Loam, but the problem with that is we kind of just want to be tempering our opponent a little bit more. And I think this is just a better setup. Force of Will, being able to hit things like Knight of the Reliquary is important. Force of Vigor, I guess we can put a Crashing Footfalls into play, into the suspend zone. We have 2 green sources, 2 blue sources. I think we're going to play out the Trop here. Right, let's forecast some rhinos for our opponent. Yavimaya. A Mox Diamond, okay. Dark Depths in the graveyard. An Elvish Reclaimer. It's not really what I want to see. I don't think we'll force a Vigor in that yet, though. A Street Wraith, you say? I would like to see another card, please. That's not the one we were after, was it? Okay, we'll play out this Bayou. And we'll pass. I don't think our plan is going to come to fruition here. The old waiting a bunch of turns for a 4th. Well, it's probably going to be outclassed by the time that happens. So they're almost certainly just holding their Reclaimer back. Yeah, they're going to be activating at some point. An Orcish Bowmasters. That is a card that does things. Let's have another green source. And We'll pass. We'll see what our opponent does. If they get an Urza Saga, we can maybe think about smashing out our opponent's turn. Just the flagstones. Alright. So this means our opponent is sort of settling in for a longer game where they're going to be activating this Reclaimer again. Not a big fan of that Wasteland. Is there any point playing this Bowmasters? It gets out of our hand. It maybe... Like, it's not going to be able to ping very much from our opponent's board. So I think we're just going to get this into play now. Right, taking out our Taiga, sure. That means we don't have hard cast Force of Vigor, which is something I was hoping for. Alright, the Rhinos are approaching. Incubation. That's quite a good one here, potentially. This is also another reason we're running the Frame of Card, because you can find it off of the Incubation. Okay, so we don't really get to do very good Force of Vigor plays here, because our opponent gets to untap and they will have access to their Elvish Reclaimer before we get to do anything about it. So this is the turn I would have liked to have hard cast Force of Negation, because if they go and get an Urza Saga right now, then we'll be able to smash that and the Mox Diamond. Oh, they just got another Flagstones. Okay, our opponent wants lots of lands in the graveyard and lots of mana in play. Understood. So it feels to me like they had quite a light mana draw. They're trying to smooth it out using the Reclaimer, and we couldn't really punish it because we didn't draw any snuff out or anything. Okay, they're going for this now. That gives us an opportunity, potentially. The Savannah, that's not a surprise. What is this one going to be? That's the off the... sure. Sylvan Safekeeper. I guess. I don't feel like I'm having an amazing time. We do want a land card in the graveyard, so we are going to crack this. And we might as well get an island. And then we can island cycle and get the last land out of our deck. Now we get some 4/4s at least. A Colossal Skyturtle, you say? That's a cool one. I think we play this one out because we want to hold open some potential Force of Vigor here. Get these two. So we can use this to then get back our Lorien Revealed if that's what we want to do. It doesn't sound amazing, but we can just draw a bunch of cards with it. I wonder if this Sylvan Safekeeper is going to ruin our day at some point. It's going to be a Green Sun Zenith where X is 3, I believe. Yep. So this is probably finding them a Knight of the Reliquary. Could be Ramanap. No, just a Knight. And we don't really get to do anything with this. So we can't really bounce anything because of the Sylvan Safekeeper, so we're just going to get back our Lorien Revealed here. I don't believe they've got... Oh, they can do Echoing Deeps here. That's pretty strong. Yeah, so they get rid of the Bajuka Bog. The Echoing Deeps comes in as a copy of Bajuka Bog. Yeah. It's pretty good. I feel very outclassed in this game right now. We do not get to retain anything from our hand. A Tarmogoyf. It's only a 1/2. I don't think we're winning this game. I think we've gone too far into this one. I don't think it's worth playing this one on any longer. Our opponent's got so much assembled here. We're not going to be able to kill their Knight of the Reliquary. It's going to be bigger than the thing we're trying to do. So I think we just save our time and our opponents and say GG's. Alright, let's go on to round 3. Right, we're on the play against Stryfo, who usually plays Stryfo Pile, which is a 4-colour non-white control deck. Because they're non-white, this Uro looks very tempting in this hand, so I am going to keep this one. Uro is quite often a difficult thing for them to deal with. They do have Cling to Dust as a tool quite often. So it's not completely plain sailing. So we cycle this, see if it changes what we want to do. Alright, so we have the Architects of Will. I want to call them Aquitects, because that's the merfolk in Loam for some reason, and I just like that as a word. But I digress. Let's concentrate on this one. We don't really have the most amount of playmaking opportunities here. We're just going to keep doing the things that we've got. Let's cycle this. Another land. 2 types in our graveyard at present. Bloodbraid Marauder. That's certainly an intriguing one. I think we just play out this Bayou. If we Force of Will something and we can find a fetch land, then we get to put the Bloodbraid Marauder with some Cascade goodness. Otherwise, we're just going to play an Uro next turn. With a Daze backup, that's not unhelpful. Not a big fan of Cling to Dust happening. An Orcish Bowmasters, you say? I would like to Daze this Orcish Bowmasters. Just stop our opponent getting anything else going. Put this in. Let's suspend this Crashing Footfalls. This game might end up being quite a long one, so having those down the pipeline isn't too shabby. We don't really have any way of putting them back into our deck because we can't run Brainstorm. And we haven't got any things to pitch them to right now either. If our opponent has a Cling to Dust, do we fight over it is a question I have to ask. Dak Faden. That card is some amount of nonsense. I think we have to fight over this one. The selection it provides is very strong, and if they get Bowmasters up and running, they can just gun down everything we do. Fetch land, a Wasteland. That is annoyingly not what we need here. Let's play out this Wasteland. Like, it's going to be useful for next turn. Do we hit their red source? Do we hit their green source? Do we hit their blue source? They only have one blue source in their blue-centric deck. I think we hit the blue source. The next turn we can play the Marauder. Now we've got the 4 types. Get ourselves some Rhinos. An Uro of their very own. Sure. They put in a black source, then Cling to Dust is a thing they can have. But the way that Bloodbraid Marauder works is that the trigger goes on as soon as we cast it, and they don't have a window to interrupt. Another one. Exciting. Let's get some Rhinoceroses. Rhinoceroses. One of the two. Okay, 11 power. Let's see if this does the work for us. It's not quite a 2-turn clock, so our opponent's on 23 due to the Uro. We're going to see a Cling here. No. It's going to be a cantrip. It is. Our opponent is in looking for answers mode, or looking for the ability to put Uro into play. Uro stacks up pretty well against what we've got going on here. There is a Taiga from our opponent. This is going to be the Uro. This is where we fall down a little bit, because we can't really fight through this Uro particularly well. If we try and do like double blocks, that's also not going to end very well for us either. So we're going to need a little bit of help. So rise and fall, that certainly does work for us. We can bounce this Uro out of play and maybe start crashing for damage, and our opponent will have to rebuild their graveyard before they can replay it. A Colossal Skyturtle. Okay, I like this one. So we will bounce this to our opponent's hand. Actually, do you want to play this first, I think? This is red. And this. Let's just get some more Rhinoceroses. I don't believe our opponent plays any sweepers. Alright. Many, many Rhinoceroses are going to be made this game. Get out of here, Uro. And if we find the right source, we can then jam our Uro, because we don't care about Delirium anymore, apart from, like, Tarmogoyf, which we can play at any cost, really. It's still fine. Okay. So they save themselves a little bit of life there, but they're going to take 7 this turn, and we've got, what, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, plus 6, 18. So we should have lethal next turn if our opponent doesn't do anything, but we know they've got an Uro, so there's additional 3 life there. So they'll be on 1, if that's all they do. If I can do maths, 12 plus 6 is 18. No, they'll be on 3. Turns out I can't do maths. We don't really have any reach in our deck either, unless we can do little pings of Bowmasters. But they just want to be filling up their graveyard so they can pop the Uro and then have the biggest thing on the board. But hopefully we can threaten our opponent's life total enough that an Uro won't be good enough. This could be a Bowmasters of their own, which can take out one of our Marauders. Well, they can actually take out both of our Marauders, I suppose, because they can block. I would like some more Rhinoceroses. Right, they've exiled an Uro. So we've got an answer for the next Uro. And we've got a lot of damage coming in. Right, this is Bowmasters. Yep, so we're going to lose both our Marauders, but that's still 12 damage going over them. And they're going to crack this fetch. They're going to play the Uro with a trigger on the stack. We will bounce it. And that should hopefully be game. So we'll have 12 trampling damage. Let's come in. As soon as the trigger goes on, we're going to be bouncing this. Is it better to bounce it? I think it is better to bounce it. It means they get to cast it for a second time. So we could bounce it in the end step, or we could just play a Brazen Borrower. This gets blocked. I think it's safer to bounce it, but we want to bounce at the end step so they can't just replay it and gain 3 life. I don't really want our spell to be counterspelled. It's certainly a possibility, though. Otawara on one of our friends, sure. There's still a lot of damage that we're representing. Street Wraith isn't quite what I have in mind. I don't believe they're going to prevent any damage with the Bowmasters. If they do, we can cycle the Street Wraith, but that's not what our opponent wants. Okay, so we've got a Brazen Borrower waiting in the wings. They can cantrip and gain 3 with the Uro. There it is. Certainly feels like we want some amount of Fairy Macabres for the next one. Because our deck feels pretty good against non-white decks. Although we do have to be careful about Pernicious Deed. Let's cast our little fairy friend. Lorien Revealed. Not ideal given our opponent's Bowmasters, but hopefully we can shift them. Shift the Bowmasters, force it to block. I have to assume they've got a removal spell here, otherwise they would have scooped. Dress down. Okay. I'll cycle this while we can. No Bowmaster pings. A Daze. Could come up. So they get to block. And hopefully they've drawn something. Well, hopefully on their part they've drawn something to answer the Rhino, otherwise they're just dead here. Is it a 2 mana spell? It is a 2 mana spell. I get to cast a Daze here. Which may be game. It is game. Alright. That was a pretty exciting one. I think I do want these Fairy Macabres to deal with the Uro. And not really convinced by many other things we've got going on. I don't think Daze is going to be very good in this matchup. We could run one Force of Vigor, because we are expecting Pernicious Deed. But it's very hard for us to do anything about Pernicious Deed, because when they've got it, they've just got it, right? And they can pop it for 0 and kill our little friends. We could run a Snuff Out as like another answer for Uro, or we could run something like a Mystical Dispute to win some counter wars. I think it's one of like these 4 cards makes up the last slot that we're cut from the cutting days. I guess the Force of Negation counters the Deed. That's the thing we're kind of worried about. So that ends up being a better answer for it than Force of Vigor. But if they just get it down, then we have to play through it, and that's probably going to end up with us losing the game. I kind of like this one, weirdly. I think Once Upon a Time is secretly, maybe not even that secretly, the linchpin of our deck. Right, let's cast this Once Upon a Time. I mean, we definitely want to land here. As much as I want that Marauders, I think we need to be smart here and get a land. I think that means Misty Rainforest. Play Misty Rainforest, suspend Crashing Footfalls. I think it has to be this for now. We want to make sure we have access to blue mana in a big way, I reckon. Our opponent might have some sort of Life from the Loam package going on in their deck. I'm not really expecting that. I don't think Strifo runs that, because there's some quite colour-intensive cards in their deck. But next turn we can Incubation and cycle the Architect if we want to. Let's have a look. Uro is good, Bowmasters is good. I like the Bowmasters slightly more here, I think. I'm going to play this Underground Sea, and I'm going to cycle an Architect right now, because our opponent has Bowmasters of their own. This is just a thing that we're going to be doing anyway. We should probably just get out of the way. Another Force of Will. Does that change anything? Possibly. It means that we're pitching the Force rather than the Architects. But we've got lots of card types. If we find the Red Source and the Marauders, then we're okay. Arguably, we could have gone and got the Taiga with our Misty Rainforest instead of the Tropical Island. A Cling to Dust. Sure. We still have 4 card types. I would like our opponent to cast an Uro this turn. And then we can Fairy Macabre, get rid of the Cling to Dust and the Uro. Fable of the Mirror Breaker. I don't think I can allow this one to resolve. And we'll force pitching Force. Alright. So the Cling is up and running again. We've got the fuel for it. Fairy Macabre. Do I want to be messing around with Wastelands and things here? I think we just want to get this Architects done now. Before our opponent has Bowmaster. Crashing Footfalls. I was not expecting to draw that one. They know we have a Bowmasters. We could just main phase as Bowmasters. Honestly, I think that's one of the better options available to us right now. Because if we try and catch our opponent out, they're just going to play around it in a way that isn't very profitable for us. This way it forces them to spend an answer on it before they start cantripping. If they've got a Bowmasters, then sure, we don't really care about that Bowmasters that much because we're not drawing that many additional cards, especially when we've already gone through a couple of cyclers. Cast an arrow, please. An Endurance. Presumably targeting us here. Yeah, that seems pretty fair. We're about to get some 4/4s. So that's some fun for next turn. I think we'll suspend this one as well. We don't get to cast anything else. We can take our opponent off of red mana if that's the thing that's important to us. I don't think that's the shot here. Is it time for Uro yet? A Pernicious Deed. That's a pretty strong one. I did mention this was a thing that I'm expecting our opponent to have. Right, here comes the Rhinoceri. Right, let's cast Once Upon a Time here. We're going to have Delirium by the time we find the Marauders. Take the Marauder. We'll cycle this now. Our opponent's not going to commit a Bowmasters into this board when they're going to finish his deed. I could be wrong. No, I'll go for it. Interesting. It's going to ping our Bowmasters. Okay, so they're doing that so that their army gets bigger. We drew a not very helpful card here. Don't want this Cling to Dust to be around. I think I'll take out this deed. I'm not sure if the deed is actually a thing they can recur. It seems unlikely to me. But we've drawn the Badlands we need to put more Rhinoceroses into play next turn. There's an arrow. We've got that covered with the Fairy already. So we can't put this back into play this turn. So it's going to be our 11 power versus our opponent's stuff on board. For the most part. Because we have the Euro answered. Yeah, we're going to take a little hit here, but we don't really care. We're not particularly bothered by our life total for the most part. I'm going to remove a counter from the Crashing Footfalls. And draw a card. That is an interesting one. I'll take that one. Alright, let's go for Bloodbraid Marauder. Let's Cascade, get ourselves 8 power. We've got the Force of Will. That's awkward for us. We'll get rid of the Uro and probably the Force. And then, how many turns do we get more Rhinos? 2 turns. That's not great for us. Okay, we're going to start attacking our opponent's green sources here. So that we can try and prevent the Pernicious Deed from coming and getting us. But we've got Loam, Wasteland. We can't block with Bloodbraid Marauder. This is 6, so we're going to need to find something this turn, really. I don't even play more spells. Okay, this Endurance is pretty bad. I don't think we beat what our opponent's got in play right now. There goes our graveyard. Like, the Wasteland plan isn't very good right now anyway. It was something that we could do if we can find some additional follow-up. Nope. Alright, let's go to game 3. Do you want to do anything differently here? Maybe the Dazes become a lot more useful on the play than they were here. If we wanted them, how would we fit them in our deck? I don't think we need Force of Negation. The Dazes kicking around. I did like the Fairy Macabre. How do I feel about Rise and Fall? Maybe we're not doing Rise and Fall stuff here. Although the discard mode is pretty handy. Like, the problem with our deck is so much of it is necessary to make it work, because it's kind of a bit of a clunky thing we're doing at the end of the day. Maybe we get rid of like one of these, and we only have 3 Dazes. Either the best or the worst of all worlds, one of the two. 2 Once Upon a Time is not really what I like. But we've got quite a strong ability to do some stuff with this Life from Loam. Let's cast one of our Once Upon a Times. I guess we get this Tropical Island. Play this and we will try out an Incubation. What exciting creature do we have available? An Architect of Will. That'll make our Tarmogoyf a little bit spicier. And who doesn't love a spicy Tarmogoyf? We've got 2 types at the moment. Land will be 3, so our Tarmogoyf will be a 3/4 next turn. You can see a ponder here off our opponent. Nothing, just a pass. This is probably cycle Lorien Revealed. Okay, so if we get red-black, that's all of our colours. Let's try it this way around. Spell Snare. Alright, an oldie but a goodie. Ponder. I'd quite like to find a Wasteland and just assemble the lock. I think I only have 1 green source here. Which means we're probably playing this one out and using this as our cycling our mana for the cycling. A Wasteland. So we can certainly do some stuff with that next turn. I think this is going to be a casting once upon a time in our opponent's turn sort of affair. And then we're going to try and Life from Loam Wasteland lock our opponent. Oh wow, they missed a land drop. You can feel the excitement of ruining our opponent's day. Bunch of stuff. I guess I'll just take an Uro. That wins the game eventually. Especially if we're Life from the Loaming. Take out this. I'd very much like to get my lands back here. A Force of Will. They're saving themselves a turn of Life from the Loam pain. But we can still do it next turn if they play a land we want to hit. They did not play a land we want to hit. I don't think I want to cycle this Architects of Will. Do we need to dredge this Life from the Loam right now? I don't think we do. No, we'll do that. Okay, so I think we want to... Is this better than getting the Uro involved? I think it is. Fall is the one where we make them discard some cards, right? Yeah, so this is just him to Turret because our opponent doesn't have anything going on. So we need red mana and black mana. We got a Cling to Dust. That's quite good to see going away. And we got the Pernicious Deed. That. I think I just have an Underground Sea here. Keep the colours flowing. And then we can either do Uro things or Loam things. So our opponent can have a fetch land here, which is the thing we don't get to hit. They just miss. I will take the Loam this time. I will loan back these 2 lands and play this, crack this for the Taiga, and then get our Uro into play. Obviously it's going to be sacrificed, but this gives us a powerful win condition. We get to put this in. Yeah, we're in a commanding spot for sure. There is a Brainstorm. Misty Rainforest, that's what they want to say. Oh, they're cracking it straight away. They've got a basic to find here. They do. A Carpet of Flowers. Well, let's cycle this Street Wraith and see if we find a counterspell. We did not find a counterspell. Okay. So there's 3 mana for our opponent. That gets them out of the hole that we've put them in. Fable is not the worst, is it? Pretty good draw for our opponent there. We don't need this. Let's just get this Uro up and running, shall we? Green. Green. Blue. Blue. And we're going to take out... How many instants have we got? A few. So we can take this one out. This is multiple things. We don't want to get rid of that one. We want the lands. Keep the one that's 2 types in already. We've got our Architects in hand, so we can take that one. Force of Will doesn't really do much from us when it's there. It's probably this other once upon a time as well. So we can bounce this Goblin Shaman token if we're worried about our opponent having extra mana, which is why I didn't cast any spells here. What do they pitch? Some lands. So we get to gobble up this Shaman token. Drown in the Lock. I would like to cycle this Architect of Will and see if we find an answer to this. We did not. That was annoying. Kind of wish we bounced their creature out of play then. Now the carpet triggers. Do we have any more lands that we can fetch? We have a basic island. Gives our opponent more mana though. I think we've kind of gone past the stage of mana being the important thing now. Clinging to Dust, our poor little Uro. This costs 3 to do. That is a pity for sure. Yeah, we could have played around that with the Fairy Macabre as well, I think. I'm saving it for the Euro, but maybe we should have just protected what we had going on. I think we could just... No, we don't have any white mana, right? I was going to say we could just play a silly Glassdust man, but that's not really helping us out. Daze. Well, we could have cycled that for the Daze, couldn't we? Yep, I've not played this one very well. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we need green, green, blue, blue, and then we'll play some other mana. And there is our big Skyturtle. It's got Ward 2. We're in. We could have done that in a way that we could also cast the Incubation. The time is against us here because we've only got 6 minutes left on the round. So I'm a little bit apprehensive about thinking too long about things. I'm just making some errors here and there. Right, we'll gobble this up now. We can take out that reflection if we want to with the Incongruity. And okay, this is what we've been waiting for. So they have the mana here. So have I made a mistake there? How many cards have they got in the go? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes. Okay, so they're going to get the Euro back here. Oh, no, they've stacked them in a way that we get to take out their things here. Okay. I don't want to do anything with that. Let's just attack with our Skyturtle. And then we can do some incubation action, I think. If we can just put another threat into play, that's probably our best route out of this game. Because we don't have the most amount of time. Wraith is unblockable for the most part. Sure, I'll have that. Do I think our opponent has a basic land in their deck? I don't think they do. So I'm going to hit their Polluted Delta here. And then we're going to hit whatever comes out of it. A Bowmaster, sure. We do have this Daze, which might be relevant because our opponent is kind of very reduced in when they get to do their actions with the old carpet flowers. Copying the Bowmasters. This is going to get out of hand relatively quickly. Cephalid Colosseum. Right, feels like it's getting out of hand right now. There's a lot of triggers here. We're just going to take all these, I guess. 1, 2, 3. Just get rid of those. I think our opponent's going to have this one. Endurance as well. Goodbye. Those things that are in our graveyard. This is 8, 9, 10. That's a lot of damage. We never get to do anything with our graveyard again because of their endurance. Reflection of Kiki Jiki. Force of Will. I think our opponent just got this one. I think I'm happy to concede this one. Alright, that's 3 rounds in the book, so 2 more to go. Let's crack on. Alright, we are into round 4, and we seem to have the continued suspending Crashing Footfalls on turn 1 plan, if that's a thing we're interested in. It feels kind of slow here, and we don't have any sort of surveil lands. I think I want to mulligan this one. Alright, this has got a lot more stuff going on, but there is a significant problem with this hand in the fact that we don't have a second land. So if we get a Trop and suspend this and get Wastelanded, that's going to be real bad news for us. I think we'll get rid of this Rise and Fall. And we have to make a decision about what we're doing on turn 1. Are we just saying we're either going to have it or not? And just go a bit wild. So we can get a Trop here and suspend the Crashing Footfalls. Or we can get an island and cycle the Architects of Will. Those are the 2 main choices available to us right now. And it could kind of make or break this one. I'm not going to play scared. Maybe that's a mistake, but I think the way that our deck works, it can certainly get outclassed in the later game by some decks. And having this on like turn 6 is pretty much useless. Whereas if we have it on turn 5, well, there's only 1 turn difference, but every turn matters. A Delver of Secrets. We did not get Wastelanded, so I'm pretty happy about that one. We'd love to find a second land. There's a Bauble. They're going to use this Bauble to flip their own Delver, or be more likely to flip their own Delver. Okay, let's cycle this Architect of Will. A Force of Will. Okay, so now our opponent knows that we're missing a second land drop. That does not fill me with anything resembling comfort. That's for sure. Yikes. We've got a Force of Will, but we can't Force of Will a Wasteland. Just the 1 damage from Delver. So that means they did not have a instant or sorcery in the top 2 cards of their library, which means they might have a Wasteland. Because that is certainly one of the things that would not flip a Delver. A Brainstorm. I don't think we're going to snap off a Force of Will here. But if they're digging for a Wasteland, we can certainly come a cropper here. But they might already have it, and they might already have a land that they're shuffling after the Brainstorm because they had those 2 cards that didn't flip Delver on the top of their library with the Bauble. There's the Wasteland. Welcome to the dirt. That's where we live now. Another Bauble, so they're going to have another shot trying to flip this Delver. Well, they've Brainstorm now, so they should know. So they're going to draw through that card instead. Alright. I'm not sure our Crashing Footfalls is going to do enough, but maybe if we Force of Will and get it through that way. We haven't played a spell yet. So let's have this free once upon a time on 10-3. A Daze. I don't think we are counting this. I think we save our counter for the thing that's stopping our Rhinos. And if we can open a can of Rhinos and actually force that through, maybe we can win the game. Potentially an Orcish Bowmasters is something we might have to... Sorry, not an Orcish Bowmasters. A Murktide Region is something we have to consider Force of Willing. Looks like we're on kind of classic rug. I don't think this is where we fight. Just make sure we get some Rhinos. And if our opponent's not flipping Delvers, we're getting a decent chunk of time here. Next turn, we get our Rhinos. Oh wow, we found an island. So this means we get to play around Daze next turn as well. Let's cast Incubation here. I would like this Architects of Will, I think. So that can at least cycle us into something else down the line. Our opponent is not showing us black mana at all. So I think they're quite likely to be on like a rug build. This also gives us a different blue card that we can pitch to Force of Will if we want to keep hold of the Euro. Which I think is probably better than keeping the Architects of Will. Okay. A sorcery here gives them Delirium. As it stands, this Delver has only dealt us a tiny bit of damage. And I can live with that. Let's cast this. Alright, opponent. I think the Euro might just be a thing we don't have time to do because we need to draw some additional cards here. So you have to Surveil. I think we fire this off here, pitching the Euro, then we can cycle the Architects of Will. Are we just in with 2 4/4s? Is there another force here? Seek the Beast. We do have Daze in our deck, but if our opponent has a Daze, we don't want to cycle this. Let's see what they reveal. They milled the top card, so they're going in blind. A Spell Pierce they can't cast. I'll take it. We've got some Rhinoceroses. The Glassdust Hulk is one that we literally can't cast in our deck, so I think we're going to fire this one off now. A Wasteland. Our opponent is probably not going to be a deck that cares about our Wasteland that much. We can take them off green so they can't cast a Questing Druid. And that's the thing that might be able to outclass our Rhinos. Is that worth doing? That's a tough call. I think I will take them off green just to try and stop the Rhinos. Stop the Questing Druid because that can get bigger than our Rhinos. Okay, so we've kind of put something together here. They're going in blind with this Delver of Secrets flip. Are they going to flip it this time? They are. They've actually flipped it. There's a Brainstorm there. So they've got Volcanic Island they can play. But that's not a green source of the Questing Druid. It's going to be a big Murktide. Because that is a little bit mean. Yeah. There's going to be a large Murktide Regent. And we know they've got a Brainstorm stocked up in their hand as well. So you can try and dig out some more answers. So we take 3 here. Next turn we take 10. If this flips, we take more. Tarmogoyf, you are not the one here, are you? Let's cycle this. They're putting up a fight, but it's not a great fight. So can we do anything to win this game? I don't believe we can at this point. We needed to dodge the Murktide, really. And our Wasteland couldn't have stopped that if we pointed it anywhere else. So some kind of... We don't really have an answer for the amount of mana we have. That's the real problem here. I think our opponent just has us beat. If we hold back the Murktide, it gives us another turn to try and draw the land and then draw into like the Rise and Fall or the Borrower type cards. There's that Brainstorm we knew about. Binning off an Unholy Heat. I guess all they need now is a counter spell or something just to make sure nothing funny happens. Because they should have this game wrapped up. It's going to take something rather monumental for us to beat this. Another Brainstorm. Oh, they're milling off the Force. That's interesting. So they just want a Force just to make sure nothing weird happens. Unless they've found a way to exile cards from their graveyard so they can kill us this turn. So I guess they're just looking for a Lightning Bolt or flipping the Channeler. But they failed on both those fronts. Oh, here we go. They're attacking and then Lightning Bolting. Yeah. We're very dead. Alright. Snuff Out does kill all their things. It comes at a cost, but that's a cost I'm willing to pay. I think Mystical Dispute is actively good here. Now what? I like the Bowmasters. I like the Wasteland lot we can assemble. Force is an awkward one. We do need to force through our scary things, but maybe... Murktide Region is such a pain, though. Opponent's likely to play around these Dazes, so I think we're going to trim some Dazes and some Forces. Let's keep a Miser's Daze in to try and keep our opponent honest. Like, you could bring in something like Fairy Macabre, and like try and snipe out their graveyard at an opportune moment, but I think that's a bit of a fool's errand. Like, they're a sort of... They get value from their graveyard, but they're not really a graveyard deck. I don't particularly like this hand. It doesn't really do what we need it to do. Uro is a card that can do a lot of work in this matchup. And I'm willing to keep this, and I'm kind of tempted to pitch off this Wasteland and just have a lot of lands that cast spells, because that's how our opponent can sometimes ruin us. Right, let's give them free 2 life off of us. Let's help our opponent out. Make it so we have less life to begin with. Okay, I think we're going to go and fetch a basic island here. Cast Incubation. There's our basic island. Let's cast Incubation. I think we need a Bloodbraid Marauder here to get some rhinos up and running. I would have liked that Architects, but we do have the 4 card types already. I'm a little bit worried that we're going to lose something if they're playing some sort of graveyard hate like Soul Red Lantern or whatever. But we've got Bloodbraid Marauder into Uro as our next 2 plays, but we can play around Daze if we want to by waiting a turn. And because we've got the fetch land, we don't have to worry about the Wasteland ruining our day. Incubation is a pretty good draw because that was 2 card types because it's sorcery and instant. Dragon's Rage Channeler. I don't think we're playing around Daze here. Are we playing around Daze? If I want to, I could get a Bayou with this and then cast the Once Upon a Time and use that as a bait spell potentially. I think I'm allowed to play around Daze actually. I think we're going to do that. Just saves us getting caught out in some of the worst ways. Alright, a Delta of Secrets. If our opponent gets a Wasteland here, then we can't... Ooh. Do they not have a land? Or are they a second main phase hipster? Sometimes it is right to play in the second main phase. Let's crack this. So our opponent's got some amount of spells over there. So we want the Bayou here so we can cast this Once Upon a Time. I like the look of this Wasteland. It does slow us down a turn, if that's what we're going for. I think it is correct here to just play the Bloodbraid Marauder. Well, the game's good. And this is around a Daze, so they have to have a hard counterspell. Now, they probably do have a hard counterspell given the hand they've kept and stuff. Right, so we'll cast this. Our opponent's probably going to counterspell it. If our Taiga was in our deck, we could have got it at the end of turn to get the Once Upon a Time into the Bloodbraid as well as the Wasteland, and that would have been really solid. But we don't get to do that. Okay, they milled a Wasteland themselves. Our Crashing Footfalls is not going to resolve, sadly. But we do get a 3-1, which is the biggest creature on the board for what it's worth. I will cast an Incubation here. Do I like any of these? I think I like the Architects of Will here. Our creature isn't blocking because it very specifically states that that's not a thing you get to do with it. Right, they've flipped a Force of Negation. So our Uro is probably going to have to do some amount of work here. But that's a thing that Uro is pretty good at doing work. So, I believe. Another Delver of Secrets, sure. We'll take 4, puts us to 11. But Uro is going to do the work we require it to do. Do we care about this getting Daze on the front side? Not especially. It's annoying. But I think we will Wasteland and then just cast the Uro. Our opponent's shown us they're missing land drops. I don't really like wastelanding against them, but that's what our hand does, and our opponent has shown us that it might be a profitable way to approach this game. So they can't Daze this, they have to use a hard counter. We know they've got Force of Negation, but that doesn't hit Uro. This can give us a nice little cushion, and if we can get this into play next turn, which we do have the mana to do here, blue, blue, green, green. Put this into play. Let's attack. Get some damages in. We can see what our opponent reveals. We know the Force of Negation will work on their turn. On our turn, sorry, but it won't work on our turn. So we can try and work around that a little bit. What is this going to reveal? It didn't reveal. So this could be a land that we need to Daze around. Am I okay snuffing this out? Or do I have to save this for a Murktide? That was a tough call. I think we snuff out this Insect Aberration now. Ooh, firing off a Force of Will here. That's just a free 4 damage. Okay, this is us cycling this Architects of Will, looking for that one-off Daze we've kept in. Did not find it. Alright. So Lightning Bolt could do some work here. I didn't have it, but this is a decent chunk of our life total. On the X, is that the Force of Negation? Blue, blue, green, green. We get rid of... We need to keep types in our graveyard, so we'll get rid of some lands, some instants. That'll do. Another Force of Will would be very scary here. 3 life is very much welcome here. So we've got Force of Will now that we can fire off on stuff. If they don't block, if they don't flip their Dragon's Rage Channeler, then I can feel a bit safer too. Alright, we don't really want this Delver to flip. Things can get a little dicey here. Unholy Heat. 3 card types. They don't have a land in play. So they're going to crash for 6, I think, here. Maybe that snuff out we did was just too aggressive. We need to find some answers here. We need our Uro to deliver the goods. And then we're going to lose it because that snuff out we did. We could be on 6 here instead. So we need to cast a Once Upon a Time to find a Brazen Borrower or a Colossal Skyturtle to survive this turn, I think. So we may as well do that on our turn. On their turn, sorry, so that we get play around some things. Our outs are not red. And they're just blue. Orcish Bowmasters might be able to do something here. Right, let's go for this Once Upon a Time. If we'd have done this on our turn, we might have been able to find an Uro and gain 2 life. But that might not be enough here anyway. We found the Borrower. Petty Theft, one of these. Okay, if our opponent can't flip their Dragon's Rage Channeler, then we're in a pretty good spot. Ooh, we got there. That snuff out really almost ended up costing us the whole round, but... Okay, so you definitely don't want to Daze on the draw, so bring back another Force of Will over that. And I think that's about where we're looking at here. I think 3 Force of Wills is plenty. Let's just go back in. This opener, this is a slow suspend Crashing Footfalls and hope that kind of pans out sort of hand, but it does have the Uro, which we've already seen is a very potent tool, so I'm likely to keep this one. We've got a lot of lands to work with, which is another big thing I'm a fan of. Right, a Volcanic Island to begin for our opponent there. Into a Delver of Secrets. I don't think this is what we're fighting over. Tarmogoyf is also a potential big boy here. A bauble. Alright, so they're going to have the Delver trick to try and flip it. I think because we want to suspend this Crashing Footfalls, we are leading off in this Bayou. This is a land that we care about getting wastelanded least, I think, out of what we've got available. They're cracking the bauble now to do the trick that we mentioned before. A Force of Negation. That is important to know about, but if we're on the Uro plan, that's not so bad. I don't think we force this either, as awkward as that may be for us. A little bit worried about Daze, but I think we just have to deal with it and just jam our Tarmogoyf while we can. Like, that's the spot our opponents put us in. We can cast this for free, though. I think I'll take the land that doesn't hurt us here. Seems like a good choice. Let's cast a good old-fashioned Tarmogoyf. It's a 2/3, so it does die to Lightning Bolt, because one of the ones is an instant, a Daze. We did think this would be a thing that we had to worry about, but I don't think we can afford to waste a Force of Will on this. I guess if we had taken a fetch land, it would have helped towards the Euro count rather than saving our life point. But 1 point of life if our opponent doesn't flip this channel is a whole turn, which is kind of my logic there. Wasteland. That's pretty annoying. I think we're going to preserve our sources here. Okay. I think playing out this black source. I think that's the one that matters least. It still matters a bunch though. So I don't really want to pitch this Lorien Revealed to go and find us an island because we want to have a Force of Will available. Still 2 turns on that Rhino. Eternity, isn't it? Alright, just a classic Delvering over there from our opponent. There's a 4. A Volcanic. Alright, and now they've got another Channeler. Really not looking forward to this one flipping, that's for sure. Our opponent's still got a Force of Negation over there that we know they're saving. Alright, here's our green source. Here is Uro to try and get some semblance of stabilising this game. And put this Volcanic in. So we can... I'm trying to think, do we have a... We don't have another Trop. So we can't get this Uro into play next turn. Unless we hit it with one of our 2 draw steps. A Brainstorm, sure. We don't want this Janler to become delirious. Because then we probably just die. A Grafdigger's Cage. Creature cards and players can't cast spells from graveyards or libraries. So let's say I wanted to cast an Uro from the graveyard. That would become a very difficult thing for us to do. So I think this has to be our Force of Will because we're not winning this game without the Uro. It's unlikely we win this game without the Uro. This is 9 damage. Is the Uro even enough at this point? I just don't think we're winning this game full stop, if I'm being perfectly honest here. 3, 6, 9. So we can't cycle the Street Wraith now. So we're just going to have to... Even if we put this Uro into play, it's probably not going to be good enough. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm not really sure how we do any of this. And if we're not cheating these Footfalls into play, they feel awful. Like a 1 mana for 8 power is obviously a lot, but the delay on that is enormous. And sometimes you can play things like Death Shadow, which can be a 1 mana 8 power thing on its own anyway in this format. Alright, deck. Life from the Loam, you're not the one, are you? GG's opponent, we did not quite get there. Okay, so we are currently 1 and 3, which is not a great record as it turns out, but maybe we can turn that into a 2-3. We've got one more round, so let's get to it. Alright, this hand has some stuff to be going on with. I think I will keep this one. So we can Once Upon a Time, and we've got another land in Lorien Revealed. So we're kind of set up to play Bowmasters on 2. We've got Force of Will, potentially Uro shenanigans down the line. And we can get towards Delirium, because we've got Instants, and we've got a Sorcery that we're going to be putting in the graveyard. And if our Bowmaster doesn't make it, then it goes to the graveyard. Obviously, Uro goes to the graveyard anyway. So let's draw a card and see what we want to do with our Once Upon a Time. Didn't really want to draw a second one. That's what I didn't want to do. I think we just want the Volcanic here. And this becomes a slightly trickier prospect. I don't think we can surrender up our red to a potential Wasteland here. But I don't really like surrendering up our green either. It's not really a good option here. Right, we kind of have to choose between leaning into the Cascade plan or the Uro plan here. The amount of time we spent choosing our land, maybe our opponent Wastelands us? No, they do not. Right, we will cycle this end step. We can go and get our black source for our Orcish Bowmasters. Just so we can hold up Orcish Bowmasters, or we can hold up Once Upon a Time, depending on what we think is best. If our opponent goes for a Brainstorm, we can obviously try and prey upon them. If they play a Bowmaster of their own, we can then pick theirs off. A Thundering Falls. Are we a combo Thundering Falls or a control combo? A control Thundering Falls deck. Excuse me. Alright. This is a Flooded Strands. We could be looking at Jeskai. Okay, we are in the combo ballpark. Flooded Strand being cracked. This is some kind of like sneak attack, show and tell. A show and tell. I would very much like to interact with this show and tell. I think we're going to pitch this Uro so at least we can try and interact with a Daze again. If they have like a Spell Pierce or something. Nothing. Right, I will fire off this Orcish Bowmasters. That can keep some of their stuff at bay, in theory. A Brainstorm. I don't think this Daze is getting any better. I think I'm going to Daze this. I don't want our opponent gaining extra cards here. Or gaining extra selection of their cards. Like I said, this Daze is unlikely to get better when our opponent already has 3 mana over there. Colossal Skyturtle. That sometimes does things, doesn't it? And we'll play this out again. And we'll start chipping away at our opponent's life total. So we can fire off a Once Upon a Time in response to a show and tell and give ourselves some options of what creature we're putting in. I doubt we're going to find anything better than a Colossal Skyturtle though. A Sneak Attack. So we can bounce whatever they do here. Okay. Do we just bounce this now? I think we do. Oh no, this only returns creatures, doesn't it? We could Once Upon a Time now. I think that's reasonable. We've kind of put ourselves in a bit of a bind here, if I'm being perfectly honest. So we've got 2 types in our graveyard at the moment. The Fetch Land makes it 3. The Uro could make it 4. This could make it 4. I guess we put in the Marauder into our hand here. Does kind of tip what we're doing a little bit. Opponent's got 1 card in hand. I think I'm attacking with our 1/1. Our Orcami. They could put something in here to block like an Atraxa. I did not do that. So I think the plan is to play this. We can return the Force of Will to our hand if we think that's going to be useful. Seems unlikely it's going to be useful given what our opponent's doing. But it's something, and it gives us Delirium for next turn. This is only returning creatures. Not a big fan of this, but maybe we get to return it. There's a Grizzlebrand. Let's try and bounce it. I doubt our opponent can interact with this. They didn't draw a bunch of cards. That's intriguing. They can just block with it. Okay, Bloodbraid Marauders. It's your time to shine. Got 4 types in the graveyard. Let's cascade away. If they put a Grizzlebrand in, we do get to Orcish Bowmasters if they draw extra cards. I suppose that's why they didn't draw any extra cards in. Alright, it's not a bad amount of power, but let's make some more power. I think we want the Taiga here. We are an Uro deck at some point. Let's have more Rhinoceroses, please. I can attack for 1 here and our opponent gains 7. That does not feel worthwhile. We know they have the Grizzlebrand. We just didn't want them to gain 7 last turn. I guess they can gain 7 this turn. That's not so bad. Because we'll still have lethal here, right? This is 8, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. So maybe we didn't need to bounce the Grizzlebrand. I'm not attacking here. Yep, so they're just using the mana to be efficient here. So they can do that, and because the end step's gone, they don't have to sacrifice it until the beginning of the next end step. And this means they have all their mana open for this turn if they find some other things they want to put in. Did they find the Emrakul? They did. This is lethal. We do not beat this. Maybe we shouldn't have bounced the Grizzlebrand before. What happened there? Our opponent just quit the entire match. Okay, so we got a win there that we didn't really deserve. I'll take it, I suppose. So in this league, we finished 2 and 3. Now, the last one, we were about to lose that game. But there's more game to play, obviously. That's only the first game of the series. But not a great showing for the deck on that front. The 2 we lost were 1-2. 2 of the ones we lost were 1-2, so it weren't like we were just getting completely bodied. We were kind of in it, but there was some conflict in our deck, so let's talk about the list. So I kind of like what this list is doing in some respects. I think doing all this sort of weird cycling stuff into Bloodbraid Marauder Makes a bit more sense because then we get to play good 2-drops, you know, like Daze and Orcish Bowmasters. Not so much the Once Upon a Time and Tarmogoyf, but the Once Upon a Time is a key part for the Bloodbraid Marauder plan. So that does make sense. And sometimes it can find some useful things like the Turtle or whatever. So I kind of do like this. I enjoyed playing the Living End build we played. But obviously, cycling too many cards in this meta feels a little bit sketchy, given the prevalence of Orcish Bowmasters. But if you're Living Ending, you can probably take a little hit and then reanimate things. But we're not really doing that. But obviously, reanimating, like I said at the top, if you reanimate everything, there's a lot of Entomb decks running around, and you're going to end up with egg on your face. What I will say about this deck is the two plans of Bloodbraid Marauder and Uro really compete in the mana base a lot. So if we're trying to respect Wasteland, which we sometimes should be doing, it becomes very difficult to get sort of both of these doing their thing sometimes. And we have to decide what we're fetching. Are we playing into a longer Uro plan, or are we playing into Bloodbraid Marauder plan? So quite often we had the Uro in hand, but not a lot of lands to get there. So it's like, do we fetch into the Bloodbraid Marauder? Because we have to fetch early to play some other spells. So are we fetching to enable Bloodbraid Marauder if we draw it? Or are we fetching so we can work towards an Uro and make sure we have blue, blue, green, green? That's quite a bit of tension. And in general, the mana base here is kind of a mess. So let's just pull these duels together. So we have a lot of dual lands. But we have one of each dual land, and it just feels like there's too much competing in our mana base that's sometimes going to be a bit awkward. Now, I do like how this card interacts with Delirium. That has impressed me in the past, and this is not any different right now. The fact that this also ignores your Cascade Chains is really cool, so I'm definitely a fan of that as a thing that we can do. However, one of my biggest concerns is A, the mana base. B, the fact is, sometimes we're not getting Bloodbraid Marauder online till, you know, quite a few turns into the game, which just means that if we're trying to do, like, this into Crashing Footfalls, as you saw, if we just suspend this, this is bad on turn 5. You know, sometimes it gets there, but generally it's not great on turn 5. If we're doing it on turn, like, 4 with this, that's still not great. If we're doing it on turn 3, maybe that's okay. Turn 2 is obviously amazing and very unlikely that we get there. But this is probably going to be most likely a turn 3 or 4 play. And that feels kind of slow by Legacy standards at the moment. Now, we do have things like Force of Wills and Dazes to protect it. But the Daze can set us back from doing this a turn sometimes. And if we're getting Wasteland on top of trying to Daze people, then there is that tension there. So I'm not really convinced by this deck. I'd rather play something that is a little bit more slimmed down in terms of what we're trying to do color-wise. I like the Living End build I played. I didn't think it was perfected by any stretch of the imagination, but I think there is a potential good Living End build to be had. But it will have to come with the caveat that you need a good amount of graveyard hate going on. Maybe that means main deck Fairy Macabres, which are pretty reasonable in the format given the amount of stuff that is trying to jump out of people's graveyards right now. So perhaps I will go back and play some Living End, because we can play in reduced amount of colours is the thing. So we could play a 3-colour Living End deck. And that seems a lot safer on the mana base and gives us less of these horrible, oh, okay, how can we fetch around this? Is this going to work? I don't think so. So we could do something like that. We still get to play like Once Upon a Time into Bloodbraid Marauder. We get some more cyclers. We can run the good land cyclers, which will really help with our mana base a fair bit, because you get Troll and the Oliphant, which is pretty good. Obviously, Lorien Revealed is a great land cycler, but we're rarely, if ever, casting the backside of this. Whereas Troll is just a nice thing that we can put in the graveyard, but then we do expose ourselves a little bit to our opponent reanimating our things. But like I said, if we're playing some like 4 main deck Fairy Macabres, because it's a thing we can just put into our graveyard anyway, that might be worth contemplating. We can lean into Orcish Bowmasters, just a good card that can hold the ground while we're trying to assemble our things. And I think I like that more than what this is trying to do. But I enjoy the boldness of this deck. And I can certainly see how things can come together. And we had quite a lot of play to it, which is something I appreciated with this build compared to something like the regular Rhinos deck, which, because it's constructed around 3 mana cascades, you kind of lose a lot of the early gameplay, because your early gameplay is, I'm pitching Spirit Guides to make things happen quicker, or I'm sitting on counter spells and just playing my land drops, or, you know, doing the cyclers. You're not having like, okay, are we doing Rise and Fall this turn? Do we need to hard cast this Once Upon a Time with this Loam or this Bowmasters or whatever. It just feels like or you know, we had like these sorts of cyclers as well. It just felt like we had more options and more play to it than we do when we play the sort of the Team of Rhinos deck, which I'm not really a fan of for those reasons. But it is a bit of an ask to play a blue deck in Legacy and find a good enough reason to not run Brainstorm. Normally those reasons are things like, okay, I'm a Chalice deck with, or like my artifact synergy, so instead of paying 1 mana to draw 3, put 2 back, I'm paying 1 mana just to draw 2 off of like Thoughtcast, that sort of thing. That's usually the levels you need to be going to not be playing Brainstorm in a blue deck. So I'm not convinced this is somewhere I want to go, but I think the Jund build of Living End could be interesting to toy around with, and I would like to have a crack with that at some point. All right, I think I've spoken about this one plenty. So thank you so much for... Oh, one other thing I'd say actually is we could probably do with some dismembers or some hard removal outside of Snuff Out perhaps. I understand Snuff Out is free, so it makes your Bloodbraid Marauder more likely to hit. But this isn't going to be hitting Trolls of Khazad-dûm that you need to get out of the way. So that's a thing to consider. All right. Thank you so much for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe. It really does help the channel out. And with that, I am done. So goodbye. If you'd like to support me in the channel, please check out my Patreon. It has a free guide to budget turbo depths as well as 3 tiers of support. A low cost one that enters you into my monthly raffle for a free donation deck on the channel. A mid-tier subscription that gives you access to my detailed turbo depths guide that is updated every month as well as regular articles. And lastly, the higher tier gives you all of the above as well as a monthly donation deck for my channel. If you're interested in supporting the channel this way, please check out the link in the description.